Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be doing something slightly different. It's called the evolution of the iPad, from the iPad 1 to the iPad 11th generation. Now today I'll be focusing on the budget conscious users, and primarily people using tablets or iPads for school, so entry level iPads or budget conscious users. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so with the iPad 1, which came out in 2010, which is known as the beginning. So the iPad 1 was a massive gamble to see if people would want a larger version of their phone. It was essentially a brick, because how thick it was. It was a heavy 1.5-pound aluminium device with zero cameras, meaning no selfies or FaceTime. Now, by today's standard, that seems quite crazy. I mean, near enough every modern tablet and iPad has some sort of camera, back or front, or mainly both. It ran on a tiny 256 megabytes of RAM and used a giant wide 30-pin charging dock. That's equivalent to the PlayStation 3's RAM in just gaming alone, which, well, the PS3 came out in 2006, and that came out in 2010, and that's using 256 megabytes in total. So by today's standard, that's tiny. Powered by the Apple A4 chip, it was a beast in performance, and when I say beast, I mean beast. This could run its entire operating system smoothly. It was quick, snappy, responsive, fast. It ran all apps, media, anything you can think of. It ran it really smoothly, fast and quick. Despite people making fun of it, Apple sold 300,000 units on the very first day, changing the tablet market forever. Because before that, modern day iPads and tablets did not exist. Now comes the iPad 2. So in March 2011, Apple released the iPad 2. It was 33% thinner and lighter than the original, which is mad if you think about it. The iPad 2 added front and back cameras for the first time, as you can see in the top middle, enabling video calling for users. Now, these cameras wouldn't be, your usual 1080p, 1440p front cameras. These would probably be, well below 720p, probably below that. So it was upgraded to the dual-core Apple A5 chip and doubled the memory to 512 megabytes, which is equivalent to the PlayStation 3's memory combined in total, along with 16, 32 or 64 gigabytes of storage, which yet again, 64 gigabytes over 15 years ago would be considered massive, as the new iPad 10th generation today base is 64 gigs of storage, which is mind-blowing. It was so reliable that schools used it for years. So now we move on to the biggest flop pretty much in iPad history, the iPad 3. The iPad 3 was released in March 2012. It introduced the crystal clear Retina display and packed 4 times more pixels than the iPad 2. The iPad 3 was powered by the Apple A5X chip with upgraded graphics, which is huge, much more increase. It also doubled the memory to 1 gigabyte. 1 gigabyte of memory in 2012 was perfect for all of your main tasks, streaming, apps, gaming, etc. However, it required massive battery power to power the bright screen, which made the device heavier, thicker, and ran very hot. Yeah, this was the first iPad sort of generation to offer a Retina display. It still came in 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes, and 64 gigabyte options. I mean, I wouldn't expect that to change because in 2012 you wouldn't need a 128 gigabyte storage option for an iPad for most users, unless you're doing content creation or 3D editing, etc. It was discontinued after just 6 months due to overheating. I know you guys can't see it at the bottom, but it says due to overheating. That's crazy, because imagine launching an iPad and then replacing it in 6 months. It seems like a waste of money, really, isn't it? And time. So now we come onto the lifesaver of iPads, the iPad 4. So the iPad 4 was released in November 2012. It was known as the Saviour because it was out just 6 months after the iPad 3 to fix performance bugs. So, imagine, launching, it still blows my mind. It completely killed the old 30-pin dock for the tiny reversible lightning port. Now, at the time, that was massive. Going from a gigantic, bulky 30-pin port to just a tiny little, lightning port was huge. And the last Apple iPad used the lightning port was the iPad 9th generation. After that, they used USB-C, but we'll get onto that a bit later. Powered by the much faster Apple A6X chip and double the speed of the iPad without running hot in the graphics. So that's a huge thing. It kept at 1 GB of RAM as it was unnecessary to add more, which is absolutely understandable. Launching a brand new iPad just 6 months after, you would need double the RAM, all this kind of stuff. And the fact that they did upgrade their chip and made a lightning port and upgraded the front camera and a massive 128 GB storage option was already massive. So upgraded the front camera to 720p HD for much clearer FaceTime calls. And the storage was offered in 16 GB, 32 GB, 64 GB, and later a massive 128 GB option. Guys, don't count how much times I said gigabytes. So now we go on to a strange part in Apple history, the missing years. So that came on to 2013 all the way to 2016. So Apple did not release any iPads, and that's wrong. It should say release any generation or budget conscious iPads during this time, because they completely shifted their strategy to focus on thinner profiles and smaller sizes. So there's a slight mistake at the top, but that's supposed to say entry level iPads or budget conscious users. Apple paused the budget line to focus on brand new premium spin-offs. Apple replaced the main swap with the ultra thin iPad Air line. They also heavily focused on the smaller, highly portable iPad mini line. For over 3 years, there was no cheap entry level iPad option, and that was the biggest flaw for a few years. People who didn't have lots of money and schools and stuff that couldn't afford thousands and thousands of pounds for high-end iPad Airs and Pros were stuck. I mean, some people, low-income families, couldn't afford over £500, £600 plus iPads. They needed that entry-level option so that people can stream their videos, play basic games, do basic things on it, to entertain them. So it was a really tricky point. But Apple was, so while everyone was thinking that they completely abandoned the entry-level iPads, but Apple was secretly planning to revive the main line as a cheap student utility. Now we move on to the iPad 5th and 6th generation. So Apple brought back the standard line in March 2017, 5th generation, and March 2018, the 6th generation. They dropped the entry price significantly to focus heavily on schools and budget buyers. So yeah, that's good, good thing. Apple kept the classic comfortable 9.7-inch display size. That's brilliant. For most 95% of people in that time, that's brilliant for them. In the 5th generation, it was powered by the Apple A9 chip with 2 GB of RAM, and in the 6th generation, it was upgraded to the faster Apple A10 Fusion chip, the same chip from the iPhone 7. The 6th generation added support for the 1st generation Apple Pencil for the first time, which is a massive step up, because you would think at that time a budget entry iPad would have, Apple's pencils and stuff, or Apple Pencils. Storage offers more simple in either 32 GB or 128 GB. Now, you would, for, like I said, budget conscious people would go for 32 GB, but people who install more apps or more intensive would get the 120 GB, which I would advise the 128 GB, especially now for games that are requiring 10 GB. Some games are requiring 10 GB plus on mobile apps, which is ginormous. Now we move on to the iPad 7th, 8th and 9th generation, which were the last sort of iPads to feature the thick bezels, the home button, the lightning port, etc. So released consecutively, sorry if I said that really wrong, September 2019, which was the 7th gen, 2020, 8th gen, which is what I have, or used to have, and 2021, the 9th gen. The display officially grew from 9.7 inches up to 10.2 inches. Now that may not seem a lot, but when you really hold it compared to the 5th and 6th gen, it was a huge step up. All three kept the classic chunky top and bottom bezels, as you can see in the picture on the right. Apple, you can't really blame them, they're entry-level iPads, Apple added 3 magnetic dots on the side to snap onto Apple's smart keyboard, which is, yet again, a massive thing to let entry-level iPads have those sort of things, to have Apple smart keyboards. The 7th generation used the older A10 Fusion chip with 3 GB RAM. Now, let's rethink this. There's something, really wrong. The 7th gen using an A10 Fusion, whereas the 6th generation used an A10 Fusion chip. That caused quite a lot of controversy there. A new generation iPad, but yet still using the same chip as, the 6th gen. Whereas the 8th generation upgraded to the much faster A12 Bionic chip, added AI smarts, which the A12 Bionic chip was 2018 flagship. So obviously just 3 years on, that was still a pretty decent chip. The 9th generation upgraded to the A13 Bionic chip and doubled the base storage to 64 GB, which was a huge step up. Now we move on to the modern lot, the iPad 10th generation, and you may see, look how much difference the 9th gen is to the 10th gen is. It's huge, isn't it? So the iPad 10th generation was released in October 2022. It ditched the classic curved shape for a modern design with flat edges. It also completely removed the physical home button, as you can see at the bottom, for an all-screen look, which makes more immersive feel when you're watching streaming videos, etc., gaming. And moved the fingerprint scanner into the top power button. The 10th generation officially killed the Lightning port and switched to USB-C. I think because, USB-C was much more easier to get and Lightning ports are a bit awkward, as we know, yeah. Apple also moved the front-facing webcam to the landscape edge so you look centered on video calls. Now I noticed this, when you went in front camera and you were taking selfies on the 10th gen before, it felt kind of like you weren't looking at the camera because the way they positioned it, but when they put it at the top, more centered, and on video calls as well, it looked like when you are taking a selfie, it's more centered facing to you, so you don't look like you're looking away from the camera. So that's a little detail. It is powered by the A14 Bionic chip with 4GB of RAM. Now the 4GB of RAM, to me it feels a bit low, and it sparked a bit of controversy because 4GB of RAM in 2026 is absolutely entry level for iPads and not great for modern gaming. But it's an A14 Bionic chip, it's still a pretty good chip. Brilliant iPad, really. One flaw of the 10th generation was 64GB of base storage, which filled up way too quickly for modern, especially modern apps, but I just didn't add that bit, and it should say just a lowercase o at the end. So yeah, that was an issue. 64GB of storage, 2022, that's considered very low, and it did fill up quickly. I think games like Genshin Impact required 30 to 45GB of storage, and the operating system needed like 10 to 15GB storage, if not more. That's already nearly filling up your storage just of one game in the operating system. And now we move on to the modern king, the iPad 11th generation. So the Apple 11th generation was released in March 2025. The design keeps the exact same modern flat-edged look as the 10th generation. It is upgraded to a much faster Apple A16 Bionic chip, which is a huge step up from the A14 Bionic chip, 2 Bionics ahead. Its memory is also increased to 6GB of RAM, which is what I like to see. It's more of a sweet spot. Sweet spot is generally 8GB, but 6GB for iPads can get away with because of its chip and the way it's built. Officially double the base storage, excuse me, from 64GB to 128GB, which is huge. Like I said, a huge step up. Double the base storage, which helps for games, app streaming, media, etc. The extra RAM allows it to support Stage Manager for overlapping window multitasking. So yeah, that's how RAM helps. You can have more apps open at the same time without it being a laggy mess or reloading, etc. And a little fun fact for you guys, it has 24 times more RAM than the original iPad, 6GB versus 256MB. Can you imagine when the 12th gen comes out with 8GB of RAM or more? That's, it's going to be huge, isn't it? So this marks the complete transformation of a heavy, cameraless luxury brick into an affordable, everyday power tool for everyone. And last but not least, most photos are by CCBYSA. Not all of them, but some of them are, just by a company that makes the photos. So today, guys, that is the full generation of all of them. It's a brilliant display, going from a big massive brick from the gorgeous looking iPad 11th gen, which is huge. So if you enjoyed today's video, guys, make sure you like and subscribe, and please like and subscribe because I put a lot of effort into this video. Actually, one of my videos I did put a lot of effort, to be about maybe like an hour or two to actually make. So please subscribe and like and comment down below. What should I do next? Should I do iPad Air? Should I do Pro? Should I do Mini? Should I do Samsung? Should I do phones? Should I do laptops? Comment down below. What do you think I should do? So if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and make sure, more importantly, have a good day. Bye bye, guys.